Hello there. Welcome in Thursday edition of the show, which means week 3 begins tonight. Is a football Thursday presented by our friends at Hooters of Colorado Springs, New York, and New England, an AFC East matchup tonight. Talk about that as well as a veritable cornucopia, or will be a part of our veritable cornucopia of sports topics over the course of the program. I appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, through the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all, or if you're watching on any of our social media platforms. Now, it is football season, but soon it will be hockey season. And the Colorado Avalanche today officially begun training camp. And the feeling around this Avalanche training camp is very similar to the one last year. Because this team is coming off of another relatively early playoff exit. You got further than they did last year, but still felt a bit early, given the lofty expectations with this team, but more so that the questions about Gabriel Landeskog and Valeri Nichushkin. Now, the Avs were able to kind of put aside the questions about Landeskog last year because they're just like, no, he's not coming back. But a playoff exit highlighted by an absence from Valeri Nichushkin, and he obviously was the main topic of conversation up in Denver. And the Avalanche said all the right things. They will welcome him back with open arms, said by Devon Taves, said by Jared Bednar. But it was a quote from Nathan MacKinnon that I thought was a little bit more telling as far as where Val Nichushkin stands with this hockey team. Nathan MacKinnon, who until Gabriel Landeskog comes back, is I would say in many ways, the de facto captain of this Avalanche team, or at least they go as he goes. He is the tone setter for this team. And he was asked what Val Nichushkin can say or needs to say to this team in order for them to accept him back. And Nathan MacKinnon said, quote, nothing. I don't think we need to hear anything. I can't speak for everybody, but when he gets back, I'm sure he'll be in awesome shape like he always is. He was playing great when that happened. So, yeah, I really don't need to hear anything. But within that kind of tells the story, doesn't it? That we're welcoming him back with open arms, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't do it. And I don't think Nathan MacKinnon was trying to let something out. But in his comments, it tells me that the relationship between Valeri Nichushkin and the Colorado Avalanche is a strictly professional one. There is a sense that all Nichushkin can do is just play. Come back, do your job, and we'll be good. I think that's what it is. This is not about mending fences and making amends for what happened in the past, because quite frankly, nothing will. Nothing will. You can't go back and change what happened in Seattle. You can't change what happened during that Dallas series. The message from the Colorado Avalanche, as much as they try to, brighten it up a little bit with the human aspect of this, and I'm not saying that there are any Avalanche players that don't wish the absolute best for Valeri Nichushkin. It almost goes without saying. They all want him to be right as a person because they are human beings, and that is the normal human stance when somebody is clearly going through some major issues. Okay, so we don't have to pepper every conversation with they hope that he's right mentally or that he's getting the help he needs. They hope that. Okay, we could just take that for granted. But it's not about Valeri Nichushkin coming back into the dressing room and pouring his heart and soul out to this team. Nathan MacKinnon doesn't seem like he wants to hear it. He just wants Valeri Nichushkin to do his job. And also, there's really nothing Valeri Nichushkin can actually do to prove that he's turned a corner, that he's better and he'll be better and he'll be a better teammate until the playoffs roll around. That's all he could do. So what if he plays 82 games? That's not what we're talking about. And that's where the Avalanche are really in a predicament. Because even if they can theoretically trade him, they are in a Stanley Cup winning window. And by dealing him now, whatever you would get back would not make you on paper better. And even if you played this out and said, okay, Valeri Nichushkin shows back up in November, as he's scheduled to do, plays great, trade deadline, Avs dump him. Is there going to really be that feeling if the Avs are in the middle of chasing a President's Trophy or first place in their division, home ice? Like, is there going to be the appetite to just deal him away? And what are you going to get? Prospects? Clearly, the conversation within the Colorado Avalanche is we want to win a cup. And they know that without Valeri Nichushkin, their chances of winning one go down. And I just don't know what trade comes up between now and the trade deadline that the Avalanche are going to accept, believing that it will increase their chances or keep their chances at the same level of accomplishing their goal. This is about a singular focus, and that's winning a Stanley Cup. And if Valeri Nichushkin on the ice can help them do that, that's the acceptance. It's an incredibly precarious position that the Colorado Avalanche have been put in. I still don't know how, and maybe with Nathan MacKinnon's comments, maybe it moves me a little bit in a direction that this is possible. But I still don't know how that guy doesn't walk into that dressing room and it becomes incredibly awkward and difficult all season. Maybe you forget about it for a few days, a week, a month, but then what happens when the Avs start to turn their attention to the playoffs? That's going to creep back into your mind. It's going to be very interesting to see the way this whole thing plays out. And I got to say, I don't feel great about Colorado's chances of winning a Stanley Cup this year. I don't. The best thing that could happen to the Avs, I think, is if Gabriel Landeskog is either back before Valeri Nichushkin is back, or they arrive at about the same time. Because the arrival of Gabriel Landeskog will, in many ways, overshadow the return of Valeri Nichushkin. Because of the anticipation, how long it's been, what he means to this team, how much he's a fan favorite. I think the Avs will put him back out on the ice whenever he's ready. But if somehow that would sync up pretty well with the time that Valeri Nichushkin comes back, I think that would be the best timing. Because it's going to be a massive distraction that's put back into their dressing room in November. And look, season really starts up in January, right? We know this. So it's not the worst time in the calendar to have this dropped into your lap, but it will, I think, become a distraction to the Avalanche when he does come back. So if you can offset that with the return of your captain, I think that would help. I think Val Nichushkin has just placed him in a no-win situation. Until these entire playoffs go by and Nichushkin is on the ice for every game, you still wonder. And the Avalanche still wonder, even though they know him better than I do or better than you do, they have to be thinking that. So for now, we start the season without him. When he comes back, we expect him to do his job. And then you deal with the next thing when it comes around. But it's not what you want going into a season that you are 1 year further removed from winning a Stanley Cup. That window to contend for a title is closing. It always is. As soon as you win, the window starts to close. How slow it's closing is up for debate, but it's closing. Mikko Rantanen is about to get a massive extension. That's going to cost him depth. They're not going to be, we're seeing with the Nuggets too. The roster's not going to be every year better than the one before. It's more likely going to be worse. But this is not something that this team needs to be dealing with. But my only solution to it is to basically punt on this season for the greater good. Because even I acknowledge that without Valeri Nichushkin playing at the level he's played at for the last few years, they're not the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. And being rid of the distraction only gets you so far. It is an impossible weighing of the pros and cons because of how good he is. The only solution is that you just say, we still think the window is open enough that it'll be open past this season, and we make a move that will ultimately make us better in the long run because we won't have this hanging over us. We won't be wondering what happens when game 5, game 6 of a playoff series rolls around, but they're probably not going to win the cup without him. And it sure seems like the Avs have made a really difficult calculation and said, We'd rather take our chances with this guy than dump him for nothing and be a much worse hockey team because of it. But it does not put the vibe level very high with this Colorado Avalanche team. Still, absolutely, with or without him, one of the 6-7 best teams in the NHL. I'm not trying to say the Avs are going to bottom out, but with all the teams that are in that contention tier, there are at least a few that you have to place over the Avs with all of this. Take your thoughts, 719-24-7-1313. Just getting going on this Thursday edition of Drive Time Sports. Coming up next, I know you hate the lack of offense, the lack of explosive plays that you have seen through 2 weeks of the NFL season. Somebody's come up with a solution. I don't know if you're going to like it. That's next. Attention football fans, it's time to report for game day at Hooters of Colorado Springs. Tonight, grab a Big Daddy, a Bud Light, or Michelob Ultra for just $5.19, or catch the fan filler, 10 boneless wings, fries, a dressing, and a drink for only $16.59. Get into Hooters of Colorado Springs for all the football action. Steve G, first one in, as he normally is, and I love him for that, on the text line 719-247-1313. Ryan, is there a point at which, no matter the player's talent, do you wash your hands of the player? I'm not trying to be glib about this whatsoever. I am simply evaluating what has happened in sports and some of these athletes. I think it would have to reach they would have to be physically jailed. Meaning, if they're eligible to play, they'll play. I legitimately can't think. And look, it's not to say that the Avs love the idea of Valeri Nichushkin being a part of the team. And if somebody were able to offer up equal value, that they wouldn't take it. That's the problem. Nobody in their right mind is going to blindly trade for Valeri Nichushkin right now. I mean, look at Patrick Laine. Columbus got nothing back for this guy. And Laine's issues are different than Valeri Nichushkin's issues, and there's a little less negativity around it. I think that with Laine, it's been very supportive from the Columbus Blue Jackets organization, the fans. But these GMs, yeah, there will be teams out there that would like to land Valeri Nichushkin, teams that, like a Flyers or a Utah, or these teams that feel like, man, if we got just one more good player, we might be a playoff team. Yeah, I'm sure some of them would be interested, but they're not going to offer anything. And that's the conundrum the Avalanche find themselves in, that it would only be an addition by subtraction. And we have just seen this time and time again in sports for any variety of things. I mean, honestly, like Aaron Hernandez, again, I'm not trying to be glib or anything. I'm just saying, tell me an example of what Steve is asking about, where somebody said, as talented as they are, right? Because you have to get to a certain level, right? If this was, I don't want to throw out any specific name, but if this was a fourth liner for the Colorado Avalanche, this would be easy, right? But in terms of a player that you rely on, do you recall an extremely talented player basically getting jettisoned for nothing because of off-field, off-ice transgressions? It hasn't happened a lot. There are far more players that are welcomed back onto their team than there are ones who the team took a hardline stance and said no. I mean, you think that if Cleveland didn't call up Houston, that Houston would have just cut Deshaun Watson? No way. But it's not just sports, it's life. It's not just sports, it's life. If you are talented, then you are borderline indispensable. And you can do things that other people that aren't as talented, aren't as indispensable, can't do. So it's not a uniquely sports thing. Look at Hollywood. Look at Washington. Look at, if you're popular, if you're good at what you do, got a longer leash. And Valeri Nichushkin is too good of a player for the Avs to just let him go for nothing. As much as you look from the outside in and say, wouldn't it be better if you didn't have that hanging over your head? The Avs have made the calculation that no, we would not be better off. They're the ones that got to deal with it. I am not unique. I mean, and that's just kind of an overarching thing. I'm not unique. But I'm not unique in the sense that I have watched the first 2 weeks of the NFL and I am asking, where are my points? Where are my explosives? Where's my entertainment value? I'm not getting it at the same level I have gotten it in the past few years. It's very concerning. And I would much rather watch 45-40 games than 13-6 games. I think you know who I'm talking about. So I want more offense. I want big plays as much as anybody else does. But I'm not willing to go to the lengths that apparently Mel Kiper is in order to make it happen. The engagement farm known as ESPN has done it again. You have my engagement. Mel Kiper this morning suggesting that the shell defense, the quote, too high safety look should be outlawed because that is what's tamping down the explosives, the big plays, and thus the points through the first 2 weeks. Doing something like that. And I get, and obviously there's a ton of outrage. A lot of former players are very upset. I would pay attention to what position they play. The defensive backs or defensive players obviously are going to be outraged at such a notion. But, you know, the NBA got rid of the illegal defense a while back. They still have defensive 3 seconds, but they got rid of illegal defense. You know who changes rules just because it has led to, and I know the NFL has done things to protect quarterbacks but I'm saying like a real fundamental rule change, like saying you can't do this and we can't say it's because of player safety or anything like that. You know who does stuff like that? Baseball. Baseball couldn't figure out a way to baseball. I'm talking about the teams, the players couldn't figure out a way to beat the shift because God forbid that someone lays a bunt down in the year 2024. To me, it felt like an easy fix. Go the other way, bunt it. Nobody wanted to do that. So MLB stepped in and said, no more shifts. I like that. You should allow these very well compensated athletes, coaches, front office people to figure it out. Force them to earn their paycheck. Stop just handing them ways that their jobs are easier. Figure it out. You got this big left-handed power hitter that keeps grounding to the right side of the infield. Well, tell him to go the other way. But no, baseball has to step in. And I don't want any sport to ever take a cue from baseball. Certainly not the National Football League. They have more self-respect than that. This is a terrible idea. The idea that simply moving two defensive backs or keeping two defensive backs back. It's even in the name, defensive back. That's not the meaning of the word back in defensive back, but still, defensive backs, you're keeping them back is completely messing up everything that all of these millionaire coaches and millionaire athletes can do on the offensive side. It has just completely confounded them. Just move two safeties back. That's all you need to do to limit Mahomes and Burrow and Allen and Lamar and Sean Payton and Andy Reid. They can't figure it out. Oh, except Atlanta just did like 3 days ago. Let's not make this some kind of crisis when it doesn't need to be. Our old friend Vic Fangio employed this kind of defense 3 days ago, and the Atlanta Falcons drove right down the field and won that football game. Don't tell me this is the impossible code to crack. Okay, I'd like to see more offense, but you know who I put that on? These supposed offensive geniuses and these supposed generational wide receivers and tight ends and quarterbacks. Why don't you figure it out before the NFL comes in and takes away the one thing defenses can still do to try and limit offense? Because that's the other thing. We don't ask anything of the offense, and we ask everything of the defense in order to create more offense. It shouldn't be that way. Shouldn't be that way. Figure it out. Atlanta just did 3 days ago. It's possible. And look, Patrick Mahomes, and I know that it's not a great standard to hold everybody to because there is no one in the league that is as good as Patrick Mahomes. But it's like he's found a way. Andy Reid's found a way. Yes, they may be the best at what they do, but they're not so far ahead of everybody else that no one else can figure it out. I refuse to believe that. As much as I believe in Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and the Kansas City Chiefs, you cannot tell me that they are the only ones that can figure it out. And here's a news flash. They really haven't. They really haven't. Did you watch the Cincinnati game? Patrick Mahomes had his least prolific passing outing of his career. They really haven't broken it. They've just figured out other ways to be effective moving the football. And that's what other teams need to do. Could this lead to some kind of resurgence for the running back? I think it's entirely possible. If this is really the culprit, right now we have a very small sample size. But as the season goes on, if we're having the same conversation after week 18 as we're having after week 2, then yeah, I could see the answer for this to be establishing the run. Because the idea is, and this was Vic Fangio's entire identity when he was in Denver, right? And it was largely based out of job security, right? If you're a defensive coordinator, if you're a defensive coach, the thing that gets you fired are explosive plays. Those are the things that stick in everybody's mind and go, this guy's a bum. So Vic Fangio didn't blitz. Remember? And Eagles fans are figuring this out. He doesn't like to bring pressure. He likes to keep everything in front of his defense and expects them to make plays. So it would make sense that running the ball, matriculating the ball downfield, and the best way to do that is through the running game. Maybe we see a course correction. Maybe just as soon as we believe that the running back is dead and nobody wants running backs, maybe all of a sudden people will be clamoring to sign running backs and sign them to lucrative deals, because that's the most tried and true way to operate against this type of defense. I would like to see more offense, but I am not at the point that this is a crisis and it's ruining the game and drastic measures need to be taken. I believe in the offensive minds that are in the National Football League. I believe collectively they can put their heads together and figure out a way to beat a defense that is just not making two safeties go after the passer. They're just sitting them back. They're just chilling there. I do not believe that that is the ultimate death of NFL offenses. This existed before, right? Monty Kiffin, Lane's dad, was the master of this. Those Tampa teams, it called the Tampa 2. Like, it existed and teams beat it. The Buccaneers, last time I checked, only won one Super Bowl with Monty Kiffin as their defensive coordinator. Teams figured it out, and it was their defense. It can be figured out again. I believe in NFL teams. So, yeah. No, Mel Kiper, I don't subscribe to your thought that should eliminate that defense. Do you agree? 709-247-1313. You know, somewhat ironically, the offense that the Broncos are running that everyone is so frustrated about is actually the offense that would be most effective against this defense. The problem is the Broncos aren't doing the things in order to deal with that kind of defense. The thought is there. The play designs are there. We'll get more into that coming up in a little bit. Coming up next, one of the newest members of Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC knows a thing or two about winning a title, something that this organization would very much like to do this year. So what does it take to win a title? And does Justin Dillon see that in his new team? You'll hear from the Switchback Striker next on Extra Sports 1300. Trans-Siberian Orchestra returns to Colorado Springs with its winter tour, The Lost Christmas Eve, for 2 spectacular shows on November 17th at the Broadmoor World Arena. So, makes sense that the best place to get your tickets would be BroadmoorWorldArena.com. And get them soon, because that's a popular tour that rolls around every year. Kind of opens up the official holiday season around these parts. This past Saturday, the Colorado Springs Switchbacks tied a club record for the most home wins in franchise history with 10. To try and break that record, they'll have to wait a little bit, because this Saturday they will be down in Texas taking on El Paso Locomotive. Now, with 6 matches left, I've done some number crunching. With 4 wins in their next 6 matches, pretty good clip, but this team has won 4 in a row. But if they win 4 of their last 6 matches, they will match the most wins in franchise history. They will have earned the most points in franchise history. And I think as long as one of those wins is against Sacramento to close out the season, they will finish the best in the standings that they ever have. So there's a lot of history that this team can make down the stretch of this season. And if you even have the chance to do that, let alone accomplish it, as a fan, it's okay to let your mind wander to if this team has what it takes to win the first title in franchise history. Earlier today, out at Switchbacks training, I caught up with one of the newest members of the team. He's Justin Dillon. If you recall, Justin spent a fair amount of time with San Antonio FC that back in 2022 won the league and was consistently a team that went deep in the postseason. So I asked him what he learned back in 2022 about what it takes to win a championship in the USL Championship.
I think there's a couple things. I think one thing that was really crucial was the home field in playoffs, and that's something that we're fighting for. It's such an advantage. And when I was in San Antonio, we hosted every game, and when you see our record here with our fans and everything, like it's going to be hard to beat us here. So we really want to secure as many home games as possible. But I think the other side is the mental side. It's a whole different game. It's do or die, and the mental capacity of basically it's you versus you in those moments and pushing yourself beyond the limits that you thought were capable of in the season. I think those were the defining moments of that team, and a lot that I learned from that team was just how far you really have to push yourself and go if you really want to achieve something special.
And I think the second part of what Justin is saying there really can't reveal itself until it becomes time to. Right? When the postseason rolls around, can the Switchbacks raise their game, push themselves as far as Justin is saying they need to in order to win? Now, that's part of the reason why he was acquired. Because you look at this roster, and it's a lot of guys who have not felt what that's like to win a championship. And so, yes, it's his goal scoring, and he's got 2 in as many matches. But it's also knowing what it takes this time of year and when the postseason rolls around to achieve your ultimate goal. I also asked Justin Dillon if he sees some of maybe what San Antonio had back in 2022 here in Colorado Springs.
100%. I think the characters in this locker room are incredible. There was one saying we had on that year in San Antonio, and that was that it's not 11 starters. It really is a full locker room of starters, and everyone contributes, and you see the level never drops when guys enter. If you rotate, even the playoffs, one guy starts, the next guy starts this one, and I see that as well here. You know, everyone is so fluid together. Everyone works so hard. You know what you're going to get. Everyone knows the system, and I think that really strong piece of identity of, again, everyone just working so much more beyond themselves is definitely apparent in this locker room as well.
And that's just such a perfect way for him to put that, because over the last few weeks, that has really been harped on by James Chambers, the head coach, by these players. Obviously, the move to move on from Malik Foster, the team culture, team first culture was a big reason why. And I've talked to James Chambers on a weekly basis, and he's stressed to me multiple times that it really doesn't matter who starts, who comes off the bench. It's about roles, what he needs you to do when you're out there on the field, not at what point he calls on you. Sure, you see some guys regularly in a specific role, regularly in the starting 11. You see groups together, that back line with Duke Lacroix, Delence Pierre, Matt Mahoney, and Matt Real, who missed last game. And good news for Switchbacks fans, he's back with the team, all good, ready to roll for El Paso on Saturday. But that group has stayed together. So you want to keep continuity for sure. But he has stressed that just because he's calling on you at the hour mark or the 75th minute or the 80th minute doesn't mean that you're somehow lesser than. And it goes back to, like in basketball, Will Barton, when he was with the Nuggets, made a big deal about starting. I want to start. Well, what's more important? Finishing a game. When the game is in the balance, who does the coach trust? And I think James Chambers has stressed that with his team. Like, look, don't worry about when you come into the match. If you're finishing the match, that's a vote of confidence. But you see the number of players, Justin Dillon with 2 goals in 2 matches, Yosuke Hanya reemerging and reasserting himself as a very difficult guy to handle for opposing teams. They get a clean sheet last week against a team that was the second highest scoring team in the league, led by the guy that was on the cusp of breaking the single season goal scoring record for the league, and they shut him out. Every night, it's someone different. And right now, with the Switchbacks on a 4-match winning streak, it's multiple different guys on a given night. But Saturday is going to be tricky because El Paso is at the bottom of the table. They have not proven to be a good team this year. And given where they are, the math just doesn't math for them making the postseason. Teams like that, you see it in every sport. They get up for games like this. They know what the Switchbacks are chasing. And they would like nothing better to do. They would like nothing better than to ruin their evening. And the Switchbacks need 3 points. Right? If they're going to get to where they want to go. Because Sacramento lost the other night to New Mexico. But that's about the only team in the Western Conference that is viewed at a higher level than Sacramento. They're going to win a lot of matches down the stretch. The Switchbacks are playing on paper an inferior opponent. Home, road, doesn't matter. They need 3 points. And El Paso's looking to play spoilers Saturday night. You can hear that one here on Extra Sports 1300 at 7 o'clock. Roland Vargas and myself on the air 30 minutes prior here on Extra Sports 1300 and the Extra Sports 1300 app. Tonight Week 3 begins in professional football with New York and New England. The line right now on Circa Sports Colorado is New York -6. And if you notice on the app, both sides of that line are -110. And if you download the Circa Sports Colorado app, you continue to use it, you will notice that the vast majority of their lines are that -110 split. Other sports books may use the 115, -120, a little bit more. Why is that? Trying to make it essentially more expensive for you to make your bets. And if they're a sports book that is offering you a bunch of money in free bets, that's how they recoup, by making it a higher buy-in. But Circa Sports Colorado strives to give you the best betting experience that you can have, and they believe that their low hole model, their tight money line splits, give them the best betting experience. And Circa Sports does not limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike some other sports books who do limit winning players. See for yourself and shop around. They encourage you to do that. That's how confident they are in what they're bringing to the table. Download the Circa Sports Colorado app today. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Coming up next, what's wrong with the Denver Broncos and how bad can it get before it gets better? Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Football Thursday, sponsored by Hooters of Colorado Springs. Reminder, you can watch the show live on a daily basis on our Extra Sports 1300 social media platforms or my social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300, Facebook, Instagram, X, or at Gingerly Tweets on X and at Kaufman Sports on Instagram. Sunday, Broncos in Tampa looking for their first win. And the conversation is based solely around the offense. The Broncos have certainly, through the first two games, decided that they want to run the football, that they want to pass the ball within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So Joe Lombardi, offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos, what's going wrong in order for that type of game plan to not work?
Yeah, I don't think it's one thing. I think, everything working together, just timing, protection, routes. There's not one thing that goes into it. It's like most things on offense, 11 guys working together.
I don't know that that's supposed to make you feel better. If you're a Broncos fan, what's wrong? Everything. Now, Joe Lombardi's not lying, right? You and I have been discussing it all week. The offensive line, maybe not blocking at the level that we thought they would. They're not running the ball. They're not catching the ball. Bo Nix isn't reading the defense. They're committing penalties. So, yeah, it is everything right now. And more than just one thing is going to have to get right on Sunday in order for the Broncos to get their first win. But I think when you really boil it down, the number one thing that has to happen, guys got to make plays. And the easiest way for them to make plays, yards after the catch and yards after contact in the running game. I do think that we're going to see some difference with the offenses, maybe quite a bit different, but ultimately it doesn't matter whether you're passing it 5 to 10 yards down the field or 10 to 20 yards down the field. Guys got to be able to break away from defenders, especially with the conversation that we had in hour number one about Mel Kiper's brilliant plan to eliminate the shell defense with the two high safeties in order to promote more offense. The Broncos are actually going about it the right way to try and beat those kind of defenses. I don't know if that's in line with developing their young quarterback, which is the struggle that right now Sean Payton is dealing with, and what the struggle of this season was always going to be. How much of it is trying to win a football game? How much of it is trying to get Bo Nix going? Because they can be mutually exclusive. What he's comfortable with may not be the best way to break down the Tampa Bay defense. You hope that those things line up. They don't always. But I think it's got to start with whether it's Cortland Sutton, whether it's Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Greg Dulcich, who was on the injury report today. You got to be able to break away from tacklers or get away from tacklers. And all these guys are supposedly have one or the other. Right? Javonte Williams, it's breaking away from tacklers. Jaleel McLaughlin, it's running away from them. There's virtually none of that going on right now. Guys aren't making plays. Guy that I've seen make the most plays is Bo Nix with his legs. Not to say that overrides the struggles he's had, but if I look at the guy that I've seen make the most plays through 2 weeks, it's Bo Nix. And that's probably a big reason why they're 0-2 right now. Getting away from tacklers, breaking away from tacklers. They got to be able to do more of that against Tampa. Then we can get into all the other layers of what plays are called, simplification versus oversimplification, all this other stuff. It basically boils down to guys making plays, which is an issue because I don't know how many playmakers currently reside on the Denver Broncos, which is what I've been saying all the way leading up to this season. But that's how they get out of it. If they do not win on Sunday, you start to wonder how bad it can get, how long this goes. Now, you may not feel entirely confident in a Broncos win against Tampa, but they got to beat somebody at some point. So if they don't beat Tampa, when is their first win? Maybe you'll change your mind if Aaron Rodgers struggles tonight against the New England Patriots, but I don't know that you feel better about going against New York necessarily than you do going up against Tampa. Or it's a negligible difference. Sean Payton was talking about getting off to a good start the first quarter pole of the season. And all signs point to them going through the first quarter pole of the season over. And then where do they go? How about the next quarter pole? Here's what the Broncos have after New York. Home against Vegas. You know how long it's been since they've beaten that football team, and that football team just beat the Ravens in Baltimore. Then they're home against LA. Chargers, to be specific. Then they go to New Orleans. How different does that there may not be a single game on the Broncos schedule that looks as different right now than it was just 2 weeks ago. Than the game in New Orleans on Thursday night. All of a sudden, well, wait. Broncos are on a short week, aren't they? Oh, it's a short week after a couple of divisional games. You're going on the road. The New Orleans Saints are off to a historic start. There is no game on the Broncos schedule that has changed as drastically as that one in just 2 weeks. I set the stopper, right? The bottom at Carolina. I don't know how much better it's going to look for the Panthers with Andy Dalton, but I know it's not going to be a ton better. So I still, despite the Broncos' struggles, still look at October 27th with 10 days to prepare for a home game against the NFL's biggest mess of an organization. Yeah, I still think that the Broncos can beat Carolina. If that's their first win, this is an 0-7 football team. A start that is virtually unheard of in Broncos history. They started 0-4 with Joe Flacco in 2019, and I thought that Colorado collectively would go up in flames. That was 0-4. Given what you have seen through 2 weeks, it is not crazy to think that if the Broncos don't make real strides in the next couple of weeks, that they could be legitimately staring 0-7 in the face. And then the question becomes, with this week being Bryce Young week, how impatient will Sean Payton be? He knew by Halloween that despite all that would come along with getting rid of Russell Wilson, he was dead set on it in October. They don't have near the money invested in Bo Nix. Bo Nix does not have the track record of Russell Wilson, and I know what Russell Wilson was in Denver, but he doesn't provide quite the, I don't even want to say hope, but that's what a lot of people went to was, well, Russ, I mean, he's done it in the past, right? Well, you don't have that with Bo Nix. And you just saw the Carolina Panthers bench Bryce Young. Would Sean Payton be so, and you know the way they'll spin it? They'll spin it the exact same way that Carolina is spinning it. Oh, he just needs to learn. We just need to, take a step back. We still believe in Bryce Young. If the Broncos did this with Bo Nix, they'd be saying the same things, but you'd know the truth. That would be effectively it. If Bo Nix wins no football games through the first 7 weeks, let's just say it's after the New Orleans game, right? Which sounds like a pretty good, game for Sean Payton to finally lose it. Would be losing in New Orleans in prime time to fall to 0-7. That would make sense as a breaking point. And I've wondered about Sean Payton's patience with this. Before, it was patience for 2 years or 3 years. Now, I worry about his patience till next week. And it would be Jared Stidham that he would go to. Right? Because if there's one thing you're looking at and you're saying with some of the interceptions that Bo Nix is throwing, the answer to that would be Jared Stidham, not Zach Wilson. So let's just be clear about that. You would be calling on Jared Stidham. Look, it would have to be an extreme situation in order for Sean Payton to do this. But would 0-7 coming off of a loss to your former team in prime time to fall to 0-7, that's not an extreme case? Now, there's time until that point. But you got to start showing something. If nothing else, just show adjustments this week and then show improvement off the adjustments next week before you have those 2 divisional games at home. But there is not a lot to go on through 2 weeks. And Sean Payton made a extremely valid point yesterday. It's very hard to see progress through 2 games. Right? What other team in the NFL did you see a big change from week 1 to week 2 in the NFL? The answer is nobody. Steelers looked the same week 2 that they did week 1. Saints looked the same week 2 that they did week 1. Pretty much everybody looked the same. Maybe the result was different. Maybe they got that one extra play, but no team is much different from week 1 to week 2, good, bad, or indifferent. So he's right. But now it's week 3. And you talked about how important the first quarter poll was. I don't think it's well, we can go 0-4 and then start going. That's not the way he framed it. You're halfway through the quarter pole. There has to be a noticeable difference. Ideally, if you're a Broncos fan, it's a notable difference in the execution, the points, all that kind of stuff. But at the very least, it's got to be a noticeable difference in the way the Broncos go about their business. The play calling, the formations, what they're asking this personnel to do, that's been the theme of the week. Sean Payne has continued to harp on it. Mixed it in every chance he got, even if he wasn't asked a direct question about it. We're evaluating who we are asking to do what. So different roles, different play calling, different formations. Doesn't have to be all in one foul swoop, but you got to see some of that. And, oh, by the way, you're going up against one of the most dangerous wide receiver tandems in the National Football League and one of the best looking teams through 2 weeks of the NFL season. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Sunday's game against the Bucs. Coming up next, Travis Hunter weighs in. We keep saying Travis Hunter should be this, Travis Hunter should be that in the NFL. Well, what does Travis think he is at the NFL level? Wide receiver or defensive back? I'll tell you next on Extra Sports 1300. The Pueblo Chile and Frijoles Festival is back for its 30th year tomorrow through Sunday in historic downtown Pueblo. The event features live entertainment, street vendors, cooking competitions, and, of course, chilies. Many of them. Plan your visit at PuebloChiliFestival.com. Couple of your texts before we get to Travis Hunter. From the 719, Dallas, big difference between week 1 and week 2. You sure about that? Dak Prescott threw 1 touchdown in each of those 2 games. Dallas got absolutely gored by the running game in both of those football games. Yeah, the result was very different, but it looked quite similar in some of the pain points for the Dallas Cowboys you saw against Cleveland. And then they were just magnified by what Alvin Kamara and the Saints did. But they didn't stop the run against Cleveland. Dak Prescott didn't have a great game against Cleveland either. The result, though, was much different. But there wasn't a lot of improvement, or even, I would say, there wasn't a lot of regression from Dallas from game 1 to game 2. What worked, continued to work. What didn't work, continued to not work. And they just happen to run up against a meddling team right now in Cleveland, or at least a meddling offense that didn't make them pay for it. And then they ran up against a historically great offense through 2 games in New Orleans the second week. Same issues were there for Dallas in week 1 and week 2. Chris says Broncos' biggest mistake, giving up on Drew Lock that quickly. He's better than Bo Nix. I don't agree. I think Bo Nix is better than Drew Lock. Bo Nix is higher floor, lower ceiling. So it's a matter of taste, really, when it comes to Drew Lock versus Bo Nix. Because Drew Lock, throughout the course of his Broncos career, made some dazzling plays with his arm because he has a big arm. Bo Nix is not the downfield thrower that Drew Lock was. But Bo Nix has some other things that I would say overall he's better than Drew Lock. And the only thing I can compare is the way I felt about both players coming out of college. Right? I'm certainly not going to look at Bo Nix through 2 games with everything else that is ailing the Denver Broncos and say, yep, he's done. But coming out of college, I like Bo Nix more than I like Drew Lock. Now, the mistake, and I know that wasn't the direction you were going with it, but just to use it to take it in a different direction. The mistake the Broncos ultimately made was not giving Drew Lock that last season. Because with Teddy Bridgewater, what difference did it ultimately make? Now, that's in hindsight, certainly. And I certainly don't believe that Drew Lock would have somehow emerged as this great quarterback in one season, but you look at what that season turned out to be, and you say you might as well have given Drew Lock the entire season to see what you have. But the circumstances were you had a coach in Vic Fangio who was on the hot seat. He was always going to go with the veteran quarterback. Didn't save his job. There was a mistake. But we would still be in a spot where the Denver Broncos would still be looking for trying to get Aaron Rodgers. They would have still got Russell Wilson, and they would still end up with Bo Nix. Like, the butterfly effect of giving Drew Lock that last season, I think we still end up here. Travis Hunter, the discussion has been defensive back, wide receiver. Which should he play in the NFL, with the idea that, he can't possibly do both? Well, tell that to Travis Hunter, because he said in a recent interview, my goal is to continue to be a two-way player. If given the opportunity, I'd strive to continue making an impact on both ends of the field, helping my team wherever they need me most. One of my greatest strengths is my versatility as a player, and I love the challenge of learning and excelling in both roles and pushing my limits. I don't think that anybody drafting Travis Hunter should look at him only as one or the other. That's the mistake that these teams can make this spring. He has value of both. It's a matter of what is he best at? What do you need him to be? But I don't want any NFL team to say Travis Hunter, defensive back, Colorado, and then we don't see him on the other side of the football. Because here's what I will say, because I have my doubts about Travis Hunter making an impact on both sides of the football the way he's making an impact on both sides of the football at CU. But to not give it a shot would be a massive mistake. And to be fair to Travis Hunter, we haven't seen someone be this effective in this high usage. Right? And Charles Woodson would be the first to tell you, he didn't play both sides of the football the way Travis Hunter does. Champ Bailey never played both sides of the football the way that Travis Hunter does. Heck, his dad didn't even play both sides of the football the way, or his dad, Freudian slip. Dion didn't even play both sides of the football the way that Travis does. So I think if he continues doing what he's doing, and there's no reason other than health to think that he won't continue impacting both sides of the football at a high level, we haven't seen a prospect like Travis Hunter. Right? So let him try. That would be the biggest mistake of any NFL team drafting Travis Hunter, is to just say he's this or just say he's that. You may want him for a specific job, but you would be an absolute fool to not try and figure out a way to work him in on the opposite side of the football. Now you have to do it responsibly, right? The mental workload that it requires at the NFL level, the physical workload it requires at the NFL, it's different. And that's why I don't think that Travis will impact both sides of the football to the degree he does at CU. And that's not a knock on Travis. That's just, look, how many guys come out of college and they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and there's a bit of regression that goes on because you're going up against better athletes, the best athletes, on a week-to-week basis. But I would very much like to see Travis Hunter end up on a team that is serious about giving him a shot on both sides of the football. And I think the ideal, if I could come up with an ideal team, the type of team, obviously it has to be a losing team, right? Because I could sit here and say, well, you know who would be really good with Travis Hunter? The Kansas City Chiefs. Well, I'm all about hypotheticals, but there's no way Travis Hunter is lasting to Kansas City or Baltimore or Buffalo, right? So it has to be a losing team. And in some way, the desperation to get the most out of Travis Hunter on both sides of the football would be better with a more desperate team, a team that is needing playmaking on both sides of the football. So, of losing team, I think that you would have to be pretty set at the corner position. Because I don't think that you can ask Travis Hunter to be your number one corner and work him into the offensive side. He's got to learn how to be a defensive back at the NFL level. And I think that's the better side of the football for him. So you already have to have someone there. So you're not putting all the burden of every team's number one receiver, you're our guy. Because that's going to take away from his ability to learn the other side of the football, to impact the other side of the football. It's more important for him to be in guarding the other team's best receiver. And you also need a team that needs playmakers on the offensive side. Because I do think most NFL scouts will look at Travis as a defensive back first. So if he goes to a team that sees him more as a defensive back, but has such a dearth of talent and playmaking on the offensive side, that's an ideal landing spot. That's a team that would blend the need for Travis with also some support for Travis to not ask him to do too much. Does that sound like anyone? Like, does any specific team pop up in your head when I give that description? One of the ideal landing spots for Travis Hunter is Denver. And maybe that's something to dream about a little bit before the Broncos, if they're going to figure this thing out this season, think about. I think Travis Hunter, it would be a great spot for him to land. Understanding that he's going to go to one of the worst teams in the NFL. Vegas, Denver, New England, Carolina, like, this is the group that he's going to go to. He's not lasting long enough to go to Andy Reid or to go to Kyle Shanahan. I think Denver's actually a great landing spot for Travis Hunter. Dearth of pass catching talent, and you already have your number one corner. 719-247-1313. What do you see Travis Hunter more as, a DB or a wide receiver? And what team would be an ideal fit for him? Buffs and Travis Hunter take on Baylor on Saturday, and we'll see if he can keep his Heisman campaign up. One of the problems he's going to run into is I don't think Baylor's going to make the same mistakes that CSU did. I don't think they're going to throw his way. Listening to Baylor talk, Dave Aranda talk, I don't think they're looking Travis's way. So it may be a game where, the snap count is high. You're marveling at what he's doing regardless, but maybe doesn't get the pick that he got against CSU to really turn what he did Saturday into an unbelievable performance. But I already see it. What I mentioned on Monday is already happening. Have you seen the Heisman odds for Arch Manning? The guy is making his first start 3 weeks into the season, And his Heisman odds have dramatically moved in the last few days. All indications are Quinn Ewers is getting that job back as soon as he's ready to. It's the quarterback obsession that I think is the thing that Travis Hunter is going to have to battle against on his own team with Shador, but also across the country. Because we obsess and we understand that no position impacts the game more than quarterback. Travis Hunter, if he plays this entire season, even if he misses a game or two, the dude's got to be in New York. Like, we're at least there. He's got to get one of the invites. I'm not going to say that he has to win the Heisman no matter what. Because if Cam Ward leads the Miami Hurricanes to a perfect season and he continues his eye-popping numbers, then yeah, I think Cam Ward would be deserving. But it would be a travesty. Huh? Maybe that's a t-shirt idea. It would be a travesty if Travis was not invited to New York. 719-247-1313. Back with more Drive Time Sports after this. Drive Time Sports. Tonight, New England, New York, start of week 3 in the National Football League. Our coverage from Westwood One Sports begins at 5:30, and you can listen to tonight's game. The battle between Aaron Rodgers and Jacoby Brissett on the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. From the 719, I've been saying it all along, Kaufman. Peyton should have put in Stidham from the get-go. It would have been fresh meat. Would the Broncos be off to a better start if Jarrett Stidham was the quarterback? I think it's entirely possible. If what you believe to be the case with Jarrett Stidham, that you would believe that he would not turn over the football. The turnovers were massive against Seattle. I think Sunday against Pittsburgh was the Steelers playing their game. This is how they win. They did it against Atlanta the week before with the throws and plays that Justin Fields was able to make, some of them being taken away by penalty. I don't know if Jarrett Stidham leads the Denver Broncos to a win against Pittsburgh. And that's credit that I'm giving to Pittsburgh. Could they have beaten Seattle with Jarrett Stidham? And I think the answer is yes. I'm not supremely confident in that, but I think it's reasonable to say that the Broncos could be sitting at 1-1. But more than that, would it look better? Would the quarterback look better? Yes. I don't know about everyone else. That's my thing. Is Bo Nix the one that is not breaking tackles, or is that Javonte Williams? Is he dropping passes, or is that Greg Dulcich? We have to be careful how much of this we actually put on Bo Nix. He is not blameless, but he is hardly the only issue. So would Jarrett Stidham have looked better than Bo Nix? Yeah. But that's not what any of us thought, except for you on the text line. Thought that Bo Nix was as ready as he could possibly be, and he was ready to go. And I think the person who may be as surprised as anybody is Sean Payton, the way it's gone. So would you have gotten better quarterback play from Jarrett Stidham in terms of the turnovers, in terms of some of the overthrows? Maybe. Jarrett Stidham's not running in that touchdown at the end of the Seattle game. He's not making some of those plays Bo Nix did at the end of that Pittsburgh game. Some aspects would be better. Maybe the Broncos would have a win, but this season is about Bo Nix. It would have to be that doomsday scenario that I was talking about earlier, the Broncos going 0-7. I'm not predicting that the Broncos start 0-7. I'm saying that it's conceivable that they will go 0-7. I would say they win, be either the Chargers or the Raiders. More likely the Raiders at home. So I don't actually think that the Broncos will start 0-7, but I got to start seeing something to back me up on that. This season is always about Bo Nix. What good would it do if Jared Stidham started and the Broncos were 1-1 at this point? What good would that do? Bo Nix wouldn't be ready. I understand because of what's going on with Bryce Young right now. People are bringing up the Tom Brady clip from the Fanatics event and talking about how all these quarterbacks now need to sit. I don't believe that's the case. I believe that the Denver Broncos in week 10 are going to be just as devoid of talent as they are in week 1. Not much is changing with this football team. Whether Bo Nix comes in at the end of the season or the beginning of the season, and everything about Bo Nix says that he was ready to go week 1. And I still believe that Sean Payton made the right call. I just don't think that. I think now the Broncos need to adjust. And if they adjust and they do some more things that Bo Nix is better at, and he still struggles, then I think it's a different conversation. Was he as ready for week 1 as we thought he would be? No. But I don't think everything about Bo Nix is that he's not Bryce Young. Bryce Young, the conversation was he should sit to begin with. You remember when Carolina named him the starter, a lot of people were like, oh, no. That's what's so dangerous about this conversation. And that's why I push back against when Tom Brady made those comments. Because I think a much better indication of whether it's right to play quarterback early or not is based on your talent level, is based on your coaching. Because you could pluck examples of quarterbacks who sat, who never amounted to anything. And you could take quarterbacks that started immediately and are doing just fine. I don't think sitting is the magic elixir. It's more complicated than that. And all the evidence to support a claim one way or another, you should sit a guy or you should absolutely start him or absolutely sit him. It's all anecdotal. The entire industry is at odds about this question. It's not like the Broncos did something that everybody else was like, oh, you never do this. There are 2 other teams in the NFL right now that are doing the exact same thing. There were teams in the NFL last year. It's more complicated than they got to sit or they got to start. Bo Nix has the most starts of any quarterback in the history of college football. Sean Payton fed him this offense through a fire hose during training camp, and yet he picked it up. He earned the trust of his teammates. He earned the trust of Sean Payton. He earned your trust. He earned my trust that he was ready for week 1. It's based on the player. It's not based on one way is right and one way is wrong. And that's what I think we're doing some course overcorrecting after Bryce Young. There was a lot of people who said Bryce Young wasn't ready to start year 1. And yet Carolina threw him in. You know why? Because Carolina is a garbage organization that doesn't know what they are doing. It's a case-by-case basis. And until I see the Broncos make those necessary adjustments to get Bo Nix more comfortable, to ask him to do the things that he is best at, to gain confidence, I'm not going to say they made a mistake starting in week 1. Because I still think the biggest issue with the Denver Broncos is they're not a good football team. They don't have talent. And that would not change at any point, no matter how long Bo Nix sat. And if you sat him for the entire year, if you only gave him a cameo at the end of the season, you would still have to go out and spend a ton of money to replace this entire wide receiving core and look for new running backs, maybe new linemen. This is not a good football team. And the expectation is that Bo Nix is supposed to lift them up. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just going off of what I've seen out there. This 0-2 start is so not on Bo Nix. And it's not on Bo Nix to fix it for Sunday. That's Sean Payton, and that's the players that you expect more out of, like Cortland Sutton, like Javonte Williams, like Garrett Bowles, like Quinn Meinerz. Starts with them, and then we'll get to what Bo Nix needs to work on. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, why the start of this Avalanche training camp feels a lot like the start of last year's. That and more stories that are driving the show next. Hello there. Drive Time Sports on this Thursday, a football Thursday, presented by Hooters of Colorado Springs. It's time to report for game day at Hooters of Colorado Springs. They have craveable wings, ice cold beer, plenty of big screen TVs, and the world famous Hooters girls, making it the #1 franchise in the league. Tonight, grab the fan filler 10 boneless wings, fries, a dressing, and a drink for only $16.59. Get into Hooters of Colorado Springs for all the football action. Ryan Kaufman with you on this Thursday. 719-247-1313 is the number if you'd like to interact, and I have a feeling you may want to interact with me about these stories that are driving the show. It was not my plan to start with baseball, but something literally just happened. Here it is, story number 1, history. Dodgers TV on the call. Shohei Ohtani in Miami making that history. He hit his 49th home run of the season 20 minutes ago, and 5 minutes ago hit his 50th. He also stole 2 bases in one game. The first member of the 50-50 club. So put away all that stuff that Dan Patrick was talking about the other day, like, 49 is still amazing. Yeah, it is. But it's much cooler that it's 50-50, and it's going to be more than 50. In fact, stolen bases, he's already above 50. And for a sport that is still more about numbers than any other, this mark is going to be one of the numbers that you bring up, right? Used to be 60, then 61, then 70, then 73, then 714, then 755. You know what those numbers mean in baseball history. And you will only need to say 50-50, and people will know that you're talking about Shohei Ohtani. For a guy that you just look and you say, what else could he possibly do to add to his greatness? And then this season, he goes out and does something that no one in the history of baseball has ever done. And pretty soon, we're going to get him on a stage that we have been pining for Shohei Ohtani to take for his entire career, and that is the postseason. It's just a shame that we're not going to be able to see him both pitch and hit for the Dodgers in this postseason. But we'll be able to see him hit, and we'll be able to see him steal bases. Remarkable what Shohei Ohtani has done, and we're going to have a real conversation. I know he started a bit late. We're going to have a real conversation, if we're not there already, that this is the most talented baseball player that has ever walked planet Earth. And you will hold up this season 50-50 and say, boom. It's a shame. The only thing, you know what? I don't want to turn this into a referendum on baseball because this is a happy time. Unbelievable. But for Shohei Ohtani, somehow believable. If anybody was going to start the 50-50 club, yeah, probably this guy. Now it's just 60-60 question mark? Maybe if he gets to play the Marlins every game from here on out. 2 stolen bases, 2 dingers. To, as you heard, start the 50-50 club. Now, on to what was normally planned for the 3 stories that are driving this show. The start of Avs training camp. We are now 20 days away from the Avalanche season opening up, and it's an Avalanche season where the expectations are the same. But it's also a season that is opening up with the same tone and the same questions of a year before. Do you welcome Valeri Nichushkin back onto this team? And the stock answer from the Avalanche was with open arms. But it was a quote from Nathan MacKinnon that I think was even more telling. And that was when asked what Val needs to say to this team. Nathan MacKinnon said nothing. I can't speak for everybody, but when he gets back, I'm sure he'll be in awesome shape like he always is. He was playing great when that happened. So yeah, I don't really need to hear anything. If I can editorialize, Nathan MacKinnon doesn't need to hear anything because he wouldn't believe him no matter what he told him. The relationship right now between the Avalanche and Valeri Nichushkin is very businesslike. This is a business arrangement. The goal of our business is to win a Stanley Cup. You can help us do that because you're really good at what you do. But if this is going to be the Avs putting their arms around Valeri Nichushkin, I don't think that's going to happen. They've been burned twice now by this guy. So the message is, come in, do your job. Because there's nothing that he can say that is going to make anyone feel at ease when April rolls around. No matter what he does this season, no matter what he says, April's going to roll around and people are going to be nervous. It's starting to become a pattern with him. And the Avalanche are stuck. They're stuck. And I would like for them to take the stance of not allowing him back, saying we've been burned too many times by you. But the fact of the matter is, it's more important for the Avalanche to win another Stanley Cup. It is. And by trading Valeri Nichushkin or just straight kicking him off the team, you would be forfeiting your opportunity to win a Stanley Cup. It just, I don't think that's a stretch. They had him, and there were some serious questions about whether the Avs could win the Stanley Cup without him, flipping him for a couple of prospects. Look, this is ultimately the Avs' decision. We can sit here on the outside and wish that the Avalanche took a stand because it's too often where players who have immense talent get, the rules don't apply to them. And they can get second chances and third chances and fourth chances. And we would love from the outside for the Avalanche to be maybe the first team in the history of professional sports to draw that line. The fact of the matter is they talked about it and they said it's more important for us to win a Stanley Cup. And now you just hope. That's what you do. If you're the Avs, you hope that this doesn't happen again. And as the saying goes, hope is not a strategy. I don't know if when we get into our preseason predictions, whether I'm going to pick the Avs. I can tell you right now, I'm not picking them. I don't think they're going to win a Stanley Cup with this hanging over them. And I can't put my, whatever quality of name I have, my good name, I can't put my money. I can't put it on this team. I've seen it 2 years in a row now. But without him, they have even less of a shot. Here's story number 3.
Yeah, I don't think it's one thing. I think, everything working together, just timing, protection, routes. There's not one thing that goes into it. It's like most things on offense, 11 guys working together.
Joe Lombardi not trying to make you feel better about things with the Denver Broncos when asked about essentially this short passing game that the Broncos have employed the first 2 games and why it's not working. That was his answer. He's not wrong, but it's not comforting. And in order for it to go better on Sunday in Tampa, a lot of things have to work. But I have to start with the players around him. It has to start with them. Because Sean Payton can scheme up something, can cook something up. But if this team continues to not be able to separate from defenders, not be able to break tackles, not able to miss tacklers, not be able to block pass rushers, it's not going to matter. It's the players first, then it's Payton in the scheme, Payton in the play calling, and then it's what improvement Bo Nix needs to have. All of it needs to happen eventually at some point. But the biggest problem with the Denver Broncos coming into this season is still their biggest problem. Their roster is not good. And that's why I don't have a lot of confidence in this team winning a lot of football games. But if there's any way for them to get a win on Sunday and just get a few wins before this season is over, you got to look at the players on this team first, because they aren't doing much of anything to help out Bo Nix. And no scheme from Sean Payton is going to compensate for that. 719-247-1313. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, it'll be the Jets and Pats. We'll talk a little bit about that matchup. Another chance to see Aaron Rodgers in prime time. See if he looks better than he did week 1. But in the meantime, did you know that you can now use your own body's healing properties to revitalize your achy joints and get you lasting pain relief? You can with QC Kinetics, advanced regenerative medicine. If you're tired of arthritic pain in your knees, hips, back, or shoulder, this is something you need to check out. You can enhance your joints, improve mobility, and get back to doing the stuff you love without pain, without drugs, without surgery, and without downtime. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in this exciting breakthrough using cellular therapies. They've got tens of thousands of satisfied patients, and the consultation is totally free. 719-347-1988, 719-347-1988. Take action to get lasting joint pain relief with help from QC Kinetics. 719-347-1988. Multi-platinum rock group Trans-Siberian Orchestra returns to Colorado Springs with its winter tour, The Lost Christmas Eve, for 2 spectacular shows on November 17th at the Broadmoor World Arena. Get your tickets, broadmoorworldarena.com, or if you're happen to be listening on our website, on the front page, there is a graphic with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. You can click that and get your tickets as well. Shohei Ohtani becoming the first player ever to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases. He is not from this planet. He is an alien, and I think that disqualifies him from the conversation of the greatest baseball player of all time, because he's not of this earth. Now, look, there's a ways to go. There has to be some accomplishment from a team perspective to really get into the GOAT conversation, right? But this is a sport that is dying. Well, I could put the period at the end of that sentence, but dying to replace those that are currently in the conversation, either because some people's GOAT is Barry Bonds. For obvious reasons, baseball would not like him to go down as the greatest player ever, or we're going all the way back to Babe Ruth, and that is kind of part of the issue with baseball, is that there haven't been many guys to challenge Babe Ruth in the last, 100 years. Shohei Ohtani is. But this is the bet he's making by going to LA. Just across the freeway or up the freeway. I don't know the geography. I've been there. I don't know. I ride an Uber. I don't pay attention to how you get from Anaheim to LA. The point is, he went to LA to win. And you look at this Dodger team, and ironically, the thing that Shohei Ohtani could help them out with the most is the thing he is not doing this year, and that is pitching. Their starting rotation is very questionable. Their bullpen is shaky, but their lineup is really good. And he's going to have to win. Now, Barry Bonds didn't win a lot, right? But right now, Shohei Ohtani starting at 0. Got to have some playoff appearances. Got to have some playoff moments to get there. But we have never seen a talent like him. And I think that was a mantle held by Ken Griffey Jr. Barry Bonds also in that conversation. But to me, Griffey was the most supreme talent I had seen. And maybe it was just hard for me to separate Barry Bonds from the steroids. Certainly, even as a Pirates player, you could say he was one of the most talented baseball players to ever live. And I never saw Willie Mays, who would be for a lot of people in that conversation. But to me, with Griffey, I was just awestruck with everything he could do on a baseball field. And that's the same feeling that Shohei Ohtani elicits. You just can't believe somebody can do that. I mean, even down to the way the ball sounds when he hits it. It's different. And I hope that the Dodgers are serious about bringing him back as a pitcher, and he can resume and he can pitch and hit on the game's biggest stage. But we haven't seen a talent like this. Like that discussion is over. There hasn't been a more talented baseball player than Shohei Ohtani. given what he does, the level that he does it against, the competition that he does it against. That debate is over. And that debate was probably already over before he became the first player to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a season. Now it's just, can he get some semblance of team success in his time with the Dodgers to add to that so baseball can rejoice in that the GOAT conversation starts and ends with Shohei Ohtani? Because I don't think they like where the GOAT conversation is right now. And we did this throughout the summer, right? The GOAT of GOATs. And routinely, whether it was Olympians or baseball players or football players or basketball players, the conversation inevitably goes to team accomplishment. You have to have that to back it up. He's the greatest talent we have ever seen. But in order to get that mantle of being the GOAT, he's got to have success. I don't know if it's 1 World Series title, 2 World Series titles. I don't know what it is, but he doesn't have any of it. So let him get some success from a team perspective, and then we can have the discussion. But as a talent, like, it's been a wrap. Never seen anything like this guy. Coming up in mere moments, you will hear New England take on New York. The line, as it currently sits, is New York -6, which for Pro Football is a significant line. Perhaps the folks at Circa Sports Colorado are thinking this will be a resounding New York win. But whatever side of tonight's game you're going to bet, make sure you do it on Circa Sports Colorado. Download the app. You won't find lower holds. You won't find better odds when it comes to futures, golf tournaments. They strive to make your sports betting experience the best that they can. And the same people that provide a great experience when you go out to Vegas and visit Circa Resort and Casino, they're behind this app. And they invite you, shop around, go ahead. That's how confident they are that you won't find a better betting experience than Circa Sports Colorado. And that's why their tagline is, it's better for the better. Download the Circa Sports Colorado app today. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. Gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. It has been my pleasure to serve you this afternoon. I look forward to reconvening tomorrow at 3. Enjoy the Jets and Pats here on Extra Sports 1300.